Data science and its applications are impacting nearly every field, including the German automotive sector, which is one of the largest employers in the world. Traditionally a field for mechanical and electrical engineers, German automakers are a part of this increasingly widespread adoption of data science. I'm your host Paras Mehta, and today on India to Germany, we speak with Advait Valluri about his experience and advice as a mechanical engineer transitioning into a data analytics project manager at Audi. Listen to what it is like to work in data analytics in the German automotive industry and hear Advait's valuable career advice for aspirants in this field. Welcome, Advait. Thank you for speaking with us.
Hi, good morning, Paras. Thanks for having me, and thanks for the invitation. So, looking forward to this exchange.
Yeah, you're most welcome. So, Advait, you're working as a project manager at Audi at the moment. What are your responsibilities in the current role?
Yeah, so my main task per se at Audi is to manage multiple projects at the same time, and I'm working in the chassis R&D and within the R&D in the pre-development area. So the pre-development area is something which is at the very beginning of the development phase of the vehicle. So we are working on multiple projects on different topics, like developing new suspension concepts, on developing new control systems. And my focus lays mostly in data analytics projects for developing new use cases in the chassis R&D. So my main responsibilities in this case are to generate results under time, resource, and budget constraints, and make sure that these results are available within a certain period of time, so that a decision can be made about if this technology is going to go into serious production or not, right? So that is the main task of pre-development per se. So we develop proofs of concept for new technologies and then present it to higher management, and then a decision is based on this result is made if the product grows into series production or not. So that's my main responsibility.
All right. I mean, I think for many of the listeners, it would also be interesting to know what is a chassis and what is chassis R&D in general about. Perhaps you could tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So, like I mentioned, chassis is a word which is misconceived. So, in India, for example, chassis would probably refer to the vehicle body. But as far as the German automotive industry is concerned, chassis is probably a very crude translation of the word Fahrwerk. And Fahrwerk in this sense actually means the entire structure which you do not see in the first sight in a car. So if you remove the vehicle body from the top, what remains is generally the Fahrwerk and Antrieb, that is the chassis and powertrain. So the chassis mostly comprises of the brakes, the tires, the suspension, springs, dampers, and all these components, and also the control systems controlling these components. So maybe you can translate it to suspension development if that is more apt, probably, or maybe more easy for listeners to relate to.
All right, yeah. So it's basically the part that actually bears the load and supports the car.
Exactly, yes. And also which actually contributes the longitudinal and the lateral motion of the vehicle, right? So the brakes, for example, are required to brake the vehicle. And we work in extreme close contact with the powertrain developers who are responsible for generating the power, and we are responsible to brake the vehicle. Yeah.
Okay, great. And you said you develop proof of concepts.
Yeah.
So could you perhaps give us a couple of examples of what kind of proof of concepts you develop?
Yeah, so what we do in the pre-development is that, let's say we identify a certain technology which is in the market right now. I can probably give you an example of my project. So I'm working on predictive maintenance technologies. So the main goal of this project is to use vehicle sensor data and to develop wear models for different chassis parts. In this case, for example, tires, brakes, or dampers. And to use machine learning and AI to develop these models. So a proof of concept would generally consist of first doing market research and identifying what are the key factors which are driving these technologies in the market. What are our competitors doing? And once we identify this, then we draw out a project plan. How much money do we need? What are the resources we need? And how many people, for example, have to work on this. And once that is set, we apply for a certain budget, which needs to be, available to perform the project. And once this is there, we start developing the models using vehicle sensor data. And there will be many tasks which will comprise the project. Like we may have to drive the vehicle to generate the data. We have to develop the models. And then once the models are fixed, we kind of develop a prototype which shows the technology which is encompassed to come into market. And once this is done, this is what we call as proof of concept. And based on this proof of concept, a decision is made if we continue or not.
Oh, that sounds very interesting. So it's basically developing models based on machine learning. What kind of techniques in machine learning do you usually use for developing these models?
Yeah, so for us, at least in the automotive sector and especially in the chassis area, it is very important to know the current state of the parts. So, like I said, we're trying to develop wear models, and to know the wear models, we generally would kind of stick to developing supervised machine learning models. And supervised means you need to know what is the current state of the parts during the training phase. So in order to do this, we drive the car with good and defective parts and note down what data belong to what state of the vehicle. And once we have this information available, we develop the model and then test it on unseen data, a typical machine learning workflow. So our main task is probably using supervised machine learning models. And at the moment, we use something like support vector machines or neural networks. And we are trying out different models, and we do not yet know what will be the best choice, but that's part of the project, right? To find out what is the best thing to try.
Yeah, that sounds great. So do some of these proof of concepts also actually get implemented in actual production?
Yes, of course. So in the past, I mean, my project is still in the development phase, but in the past, we had many projects which were developed in the pre-development, and a strategic decision was made to bring this into market, and then finally they were developed into series production. And the scenario of series development is quite different from pre-development, because in series development, we have suppliers, we need to talk to suppliers, they need to stick to our testing procedures, and so on and so forth. A classic example of this workflow is the rear wheel steering in the new A8. So the rear wheel steering started off as a pre-development project in my department around 6 to 7 years ago. And then it went through a lot of iterations in my project, and a decision was made, and then eventually it came out into the series vehicles. So today you can see the rear wheel steering in the A8, and that is one of the product which came from us.
Very interesting. Very interesting to see applications of machine learning and data analytics in so many different fields.
Yes, definitely. So we started off focusing more on data analytics from the past 3 years, and I was one of the first guys to take up this, at least for the chassis R&D.
Okay, very good. And you originally are from India, and you're living in Ingolstadt in Germany now.
Mm-hmm.
So could you tell us a little bit about your journey from India to Germany?
Yeah, sure. So I am originally from Hyderabad in India, in southern India, and I completed my schooling there. And then immediately after my schooling, I also studied mechanical engineering from Osmania University, which is like a very well-known university in India. So immediately after my bachelor's in mechanical engineering, I wanted to immediately continue, studying further, and I wanted to do a master's. And yes, I was looking for different options, and Germany was always my first priority, because I knew from the beginning that I wanted to be an automotive engineer. So Germany was obviously the right choice to study automotive engineering. And I also wanted to come to a place where everything was new, like the language was new, and you needed some sort of a challenge, to drive you. And that is what drove me to come to Germany. I had also looked at options in the US, but then due to the financial load which you have in the US, the courses are really expensive, and there's a lot of visa issues and so on and so forth. And that's why Germany was probably the better choice for me. And that's how I ended up in Germany. So I came to Aachen and I did my master's in automotive engineering at RWTH Aachen. And yes, immediately after my master's, then I started looking for jobs and it worked out at Audi. So that's how I moved to Audi, and I'm currently working there since the past 6.5 years, mostly in the chassis development. I started off as a trainee and did a graduate trainee program for 1 year, and then I moved to the chassis pre-development, and I've been there ever since.
Okay. That's very interesting. So you were looking for a challenge to move to a country where the language was different. I mean, normally people would think of doing the other way around. How has the experience been for you so far?
Yeah, for me, the experience has been very enriching. So, of course, the language and the new society was probably one part of my decision, but the other part was also definitely the financial aspect. And for me, somehow Europe is much more interesting than the US, because in US probably you will end up meeting this a lot of Indians, and you don't get to interact a lot in the international sector. And that was something which I wanted to avoid. I wanted to try out something completely new, and that was one of the main reasons for me to move to Germany. And language, that's why, because yeah, I mean, if you go to the US, it's English again, and we've all been brought up in English, so it's nothing new, right? So coming to Germany, you learn a new language, and of course, the main motivation is that the automotive industry is the best in the world in Germany. So I guess, yeah, those were the factors which pushed me to come here.
That's true. So, and do you feel comfortable with German? I mean, do you work in German at your work?
Yeah, so I'm very comfortable in German. So, but yeah, at least at Audi and many other traditional German firms, you cannot do without German. It is extremely important that you speak, communicate, write, read in German. You know, all our presentations are held in German. So it's completely German. English is almost non-existent.
Okay, interesting. And you learned German after coming to Germany.
Yes, correct. So I moved to Germany and I started learning German as part of my course at the university, because it was one of the prerequisites for me to pass the master's exam. And that's where I picked up German. But for me, probably the biggest difference was that I was living in a hostel with a lot of German students. And in my personal opinion, learning German just at the German course is not going to help a person. You need to practice it as much as you can. And I had the good fortune of having a lot of German friends in my hostel, and I had, yeah, taken it upon myself that I will only speak in German, and I had requested some of my close friends to correct me if I made mistakes. And over a period of, let's say, 6 months to 1 year, my German learning curve was really exponentially growing because of the help that I received from these people. And yeah, so that was a major factor. And of course, parallelly, you learn the theory in the class in the German course, and you kind of implement it in practice with the people you know. That's how I think is the best way to learn German.
Yeah, I mean, that's also very helpful in everyday life. And also, I think it opens up completely new doors for you. So
Definitely, definitely. I cannot disagree more. Sorry, I cannot agree more. um, yeah, it is extremely important to know German in Germany. Many people underestimate this because a lot of courses today are being offered in English. So people at least think, I mean, this is not specific to Indians, this is specific to everybody. I know all international students who aspire to come to Germany think, okay, the course is in English, so I really don't have to learn German. And in fact, to an extent, is probably even true, because once you come here, all your professors, all the other students in the university speak English, so you don't really feel the need. But the moment you step out at the university, let's say you have to go to the supermarket, or you need to, get a phone contract or an internet contract, all the documentation is in German. So the moment you do not speak German, you have a big disadvantage. And that's what differentiates peers here, in my opinion. So somebody who speaks German has a lot more chance of getting a job or an internship, or generally getting accustomed to life very quickly in Germany. So in my opinion, the language is of the utmost importance.
okay, that's very good to know. Um, And you already mentioned, so you wanted to kind of go into the automotive sector in Germany, and you also have now a lot of experience in the automotive sector. I mean, I saw that you worked at Ford, at Daimler, at Seat, and now you're at Audi for the past 6 years. So, in your experience, what is it like to work in the automotive sector in Germany?
Yeah, so that is true what you mentioned. So from the day that I came here, I started studying at the Institute for Automotive Engineering in RWTH Aachen, and somehow it happened that I finished my internship, my master's thesis, and also my job in the automotive sector. Of course, that was the goal. But to be frank, automotive sector is probably one of the most stable industries in Germany, and the example is very clear right now because of COVID-19 and coronavirus. The entire world has been affected. Take the example of Lufthansa, for example. The aviation industry, it's almost went bankrupt, and the German government had to bail it out. But all the automotive companies, like the Volkswagen Group or BMW Group or Daimler, they have been stable. There have been very less layoffs in these companies. People are still getting their bonuses and salaries. So from that perspective, the automotive sector is an extremely stable job in Germany, and there's a lot of work which happens. Studies say that almost 60% of Germany's economy is indirectly or directly dependent on the automotive sector. Just not the OEMs, the suppliers and their suppliers, and all the way down to the people who are mining aluminium or steel. So somehow they are all supplying to the automotive industry. So it's an extremely comfortable sector to work with. The contracts for the employee contracts are very, very comfortable. You have a lot of free time after work. The work-life balance is amazing, and the job is stable with a stable salary. So yeah, it's extremely comfortable, and of course, a lot of innovation happens in this area. So if you're a geek in mechanical or electrical engineering, this is the best place to work.
Okay, that's very good advice. Thank you.
Yeah.
And mentioned that you started out as a trainee at Audi, and then you uh, basically moved up the ladder, and now you are a project manager focusing on projects in the area of data analytics.
Yeah.
So, how did you make this transition, and why did you decide to make this transition?
Yeah, so I started off as a trainee, and during this phase, I built a strong network of people because as a trainee, I had the opportunity to work for different business areas. Like, for example, I worked for the central project management, I worked in the purchasing department, the marketing department, sales, service, and so on. And this kind of built a huge network for me. And then through this network, I was able to find the job which I was really interested in, and that was the pre-development, because you get to work with innovative projects there. And once I came there, I initially started off just as a development engineer, which means there were other project leaders working on different projects, and I had to assist them in some of the tasks. And after 1 to 2 years of that, I had the opportunity to apply for my own projects and then get budgeted for that. And that's how I started off. I started off with 1 or 2 projects, and then finally, around 2.5, 3 years ago, my boss came to me and said, "So we want to try out something new in data analytics. Nothing has been done before in the chassis R&D. Would you be interested?" And so this is an opportunity which your boss gives you, right? So I had no idea about machine learning or AI before that, but I took on this because that is kind of an opportunity for me to grow personally and also professionally. And then I spent a lot of time trying to learn what is AI, what is machine learning, and then finally had the opportunity to grow into a project manager through this phase. So I think it's a little bit of initiative which you have to show from your side, and then grasp opportunities which are given by higher management levels. So that's how I chose, and right now I'm doing this project management work, and let's see how it goes into the future.
Okay, yeah, that's great. Yeah, it's a very popular area at the moment. There is so
Yeah.
much to do. Yeah,
Yeah, especially data science, right? So data science is all pervasive, it's omnipresent, and you can really apply data science anywhere. And I think data is going to be the new gold. So it is probably going to be the biggest assets of these enterprises. And yeah, so if you're a data scientist, I don't think you have to worry about getting employed in Germany.
yeah, that's very good to know. It's very encouraging. So if you would not have moved into this area of data science,
Hmm.
uh, someone with your background, so in mechanical engineering or automotive engineering, what are the other options that someone might have, or what would your career have looked like? Let's say, I don't know how to say this.
Yeah, so I think it is a question. I think you need to separate it into two parts. One is definitely the interests you have. So you can see that a lot of people who study mechanical or electrical engineering end up doing completely different things. And the automotive sector per se is not just concentrated on the core product, So the core product of our industry is the vehicle, right? But in order to build this vehicle, there are a lot of other facets which need to be considered. So, for example, it starts off from market research. So you don't really have to be an automotive engineer for that. You can be an MBA, and then we do the R&D, which is then traditionally mechanical and electrical engineering. And there's the whole idea of production. So you can be a mechanical engineer with production background, or something like logistics and marketing and sales and service. So there are a lot of facets. So if I had not done data science, maybe I would have continued to be a suspension engineer and done something in the area of control system development. I'm a technical guy, so I'd like to remain in the technical area, but at the same time, I also want to grow professionally, which means I would have done something like project management in some technical field.
Okay, okay. And are there any sort of, I don't know, important skills that are typically very useful when trying to work in the German automotive sector?
Yeah, so definitely. So there are a few skills which I would say are pretty specific to the automotive sector. It depends, of course, on what area you're working in. So R&D, for example, we use a lot of software to develop models and to develop new control systems and stuff like that. So one of the main skills which I had to pick up after coming here was MATLAB and Simulink. So this is a software suite which is offered by MathWorks Incorporated, and this is like all pervasive in the automotive industry. Literally everybody uses MATLAB and Simulink. And apart from that, depending on your area, maybe especially in the R&D and data analytics area, you may have to use Python or Spark and stuff like that. And an automatic prerequisite if you want to enter the professional life in Germany is the basics like Microsoft Office or stuff like that. But a skill which is actually underrated, like I mentioned even before, is the language. So I think an aspiring student or a person trying to come to Germany should not neglect this aspect, because your chances grow exponentially if you know the language. Yes, so these are mainly the skills. And in Germany, I also observed that the documentation is done extremely precisely. So, for example, in my work, I use LaTeX for documentation. This is almost unheard of in India. Everybody uses Microsoft Word. But for professional documentation, LaTeX is something which I would definitely recommend students to learn.
Okay, yeah, that's true. It's very popular for scientific documents. I totally agree.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. In your case, do you think it was a good idea to study automotive engineering at Aachen? I mean, would you recommend it to other people with a background in mechanical engineering?
Yes, definitely. So Aachen, RWTH Aachen is rated the best university for mechanical engineering in Germany, and especially automotive engineering, because there is a long tradition of automotive engineering projects and cooperations with the industry in Aachen. And so definitely in that aspect, it's an amazing place to study automotive engineering or mechanical engineering for that matter. And Aachen also offers a lot of other courses in electronics and communication and so on. And apart from that, Technical University in Munich is also a very, very big, you know, how do you say, a power in the in the university world in Germany. But to be frank, in Germany, it doesn't matter which university you go to, the standard is pretty high. So they are almost all on par. The teaching, be it the teaching or the library facilities in general, everything is really good. But yes, Aachen for me was choice number one, because especially of the location where it is in Germany, and also because of the reputation it had.
Okay, very good to know. And are there any career opportunities that you would recommend for people who are looking to work at Audi or in the German automotive sector in general?
Yeah, so career opportunities, like I mentioned, if you have these skills before, your chances grow exponentially to find a job. And at the moment, there's a drastic change going on in the industry, right? So a lot of companies are trying to become digital companies. So traditionally, all these were, mechanical or electronic companies, and now they want to be digital, which means there will be a lot of opportunities for people from the IT industry or data analysts and so on. I can give you an example. So Audi is part of the Volkswagen Group, and recently Volkswagen Group announced that they will form a new company to develop the software in-house. So what was happening until now was that Audi or Porsche or Volkswagen, they were all trying to contract suppliers to develop some software product for them. And Volkswagen Group relatively quickly realized that this is actually inefficient because we are all part of the same group and we all need similar software. So it makes sense to have one company which takes in requirements from different, daughter companies like Audi or Porsche and develop the software platform in-house. So a new company was formed called the Car Software Organization, and the major recruitment activities in this company are related to IT and data science. So although it is a company which is catering to the traditional mechanical industry, you don't really have to, be a mechanical engineer to get into one of these companies. So that is, the spectrum of the available jobs within the automotive industry is currently growing. So any field of engineering or science will definitely have some part to play in this industry. So I think all people from all fields, all STEM fields especially, are encouraged to apply, and there are a lot of opportunities.
Great, yeah. It's great that you mentioned Car Software Organization.
Mm-hmm.
I also remember reading it in the newspaper that there is, that they're going to also, first of all, hire a lot of people in-house and then also a lot of people externally, so new people.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's
So
true.
a lot of the workforce which we had, which were working on these software projects, has now moved to the Car Software Organization, but there will be at least a couple of thousand jobs which will open up in the future in the next 1 or 2 years for external recruitments. So, for people from outside. And there is also another trend which is observable here that, for example, German is becoming a bit less important, and English is, trying to grow in the curve because IT field has traditionally been an English speaking field, and so maybe that's also an encouragement for aspiring students. But I still stick to my statement that you need to know German.
Okay. And do you have, so you mentioned learning German. Do you have any other advice for people from India or from other countries who are looking to follow your footsteps and build a career in the German automotive sector?
Yeah, so my advice would be that whatever you do in India, especially in terms of your exams or in terms of your projects, make sure that you're very diligent in your work. Like, make sure you know your work in and out. Learn how to write a proper thesis, from scratch. How to, do a research, how to present your results. Basically, documentation skills. So I would definitely suggest people to improve on their documentation skills because I found, even personally in my own experience, that my documentation skills were very poor when I initially moved to Germany. It is only here that I improved it, and it has massive value right now in my job. So how to write emails, how professional communication, documentation, and the software which I mentioned earlier, MATLAB and Simulink. It's not that common in India to use these. At least this was the case 10 years ago when I moved. When I was studying bachelor's. But these are some of the skills I would definitely recommend anybody in the STEM field to pick up much before moving to Germany, because then the chances of you getting an internship or thesis drastically grow.
Great. That sounds like very useful advice. Yeah. So I have to thank you, Advait, for sharing all your valuable advice and your experience with our listeners. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. And if my advice is going to help somebody, I will be more than happy to offer it. So thank you for the initiative. That it's a great initiative that you're interacting with people who are already in Germany and who already completed or build up a career here, and then trying to disseminate this information to aspiring students. So I think it is a great initiative, and thank you very much also.
Yeah, thanks. I'm really happy to hear your feedback. Thank you very much for the encouragement.
Yeah.
That's all, folks. Remember to subscribe to our podcast and check out our blog on indiatogermany.com. See you in the next episode.